10 minutes now. Go out to at least 40.
One of the striking differences between Churches of Christ and most other religious groups, as you well know, is the fact that faithful, I emphasize that word, faithful Churches of Christ do not use mechanical instrumental music. I'm just in the printed page that you have in the book. I just said MIM, mechanical instrumental music. Some people will say over the years, they'll say, you're the ones that don't have music. Yeah, we have music. Don't ever agree with that. Point out it's vocal music, and it's making the melody in your heart from Ephesians 5:19. Don't let stuff slide. Even little things like that sometimes could be a great evangelistic conversation starter if you want to do it, and then talk to people, then bring it out. And again, we're going to make some remarks here that may bother some people, even some who are listening, perhaps over the internet, or will go back and listen to these. I hope you will, all of the lessons that are being archived. But we do not use mechanical instrumental music in worship to God. Many people are surprised to discover when they're visiting our services, of course, that we sing a cappella and making, as I said, the melody with the heart, without mechanical accompaniment. And sometimes even those who are members of the Lord's church, in effect, offer apologies, I've noticed, over the last 50 years or more, for our disuse of pianos and organs and guitars and the like. The fact is, though, we have absolutely nothing, brethren, to apologize about or for concerning this subject. We do not have anything to apologize for. They do, but we do not. We do not. Sometimes, as I said, even members of the church are at fault, I believe, here. Each New Testament Christian ought to be able to explain with this Bible, particularly the New Testament in hand, you know, what the Bible teaches about worshiping God as far as music is concerned in worship to God, and the importance, we should stress it, the importance that why that we maintain strong opposition to the presence of another type of music as being unauthorized. And when it's kind of, let me give this illustration. I put it in the material, I think. When you sinned, well, I'm sorry, ladies, I'm sorry, request for your wife to go and take the car down because you're working at something else for a tune-up on your vehicle, and she tells the mechanic, like you've said, to do, and you've instructed her, or I should say requested, as I said, you requested her to tell the mechanic to do an engine tune-up. To do an engine tune-up. This does not mean, ladies, are you listening here? It does not mean that he is authorized to rebuild the transmission on that car. Are you following me here? You ladies are shaking your heads. You're going to hurt me probably later for saying that. But the fact is, that's what this is all about. It's all about authority. And you're not authorizing the mechanic to go from one end to the other of the car. Oh, they will. They want to find all kinds of stuff. My dad used to go in, and he had the guts at Firestone or Goodyear or BF Goodrich, whatever it was, and their little coupon in the paper back in the 50s or early 60s, for 44 cents, he could get them to rotate his tires. And they would show him 86 things. And I'd be sitting over there, ashamed he's just going to pay them 44 cents, He'd pull, I can see him right now pulling that money out and counting his 44 cents out, maybe plus tax, I don't know, a couple of pennies maybe for that. And then he'd say, yeah, I know, I need to have that done sometime, And then we drove out of there, and he was only out the 44 cents and maybe a little tax. And most of us don't have that kind of courage. But anyway, it's a matter of authorization. And so I just say, if you didn't follow my little do an engine tune-up, and then the guy ends up and you allow him to do a whole transmission job and all kinds of other things, then I just put, I think in the material there, that if you didn't follow that, you can just get up and leave now. Since you're kind of like Johnny Oxendine, you apparently haven't reached the age of accountability yet. So, I saw you back there, Johnny. You didn't slip in. So the key here the key here is the difference between generic, you see, a generic statement like work on the car, and a specific statement, do an engine tune-up. Do an engine tune-up. The world of difference there, and we all know that. And here's the difference in that situation. It's going to be about $3,000 probably, or $2,000 or $3,000 if he does the transmission and you didn't authorize it. That's one difference. But there's more than a practical difference. You remember that old song of the Statler Brothers song, The Class of 57 Had Its Dreams? Now, you know, Bruce Stulting's out here, and he was of the class of, what was it, 1923? But there's that song, and in that song, Bruce, you remember there's a line, different lines in there, and people doing different things, and we all thought the world would change to, you know, to fit our needs and so forth. But the class of 57 had its dreams. But you know, that song listed a bunch of things, but the one that stood out to me, I remember, even way back then, in relationship to me being a New Testament Christian and knowing what the kind of music is that God has authorized, is that it says, this person does this, and Frank works at the mill, and all these different things in that song. But then it said, and Peggy plays the organ at the Presbyterian church. Yeah, Peggy plays the organ. Is that just an innocent, thing? No real problem? Let me set forth a basic argument, which we've left you here in the materials. You'll have it, hopefully, to go back and study through. I hope you will. Everybody's lessons, I'm sure, are great, and to go through and really meditate, write on the side and so forth, add scriptures in. But let's just make a basic argument here. If it is the case that the new covenant authorizes the singing and worship to God, that's part A, and part B, there is no new covenant passage authorizing any coordinates to singing. Notice that? Any coordinates to singing. Then C follows, the new covenant authorizes singing and worship to God exclusively as the music God demands. Okay? And I won't go into all the argumentation. Most of you heard all that before. One year Michael let me actually speak 3 times on logic in the Bible. You can trick an old codger sometimes into a lot of things they might not have really wanted to do. And his wife told me he's, like a while ago where he had a little lapse there on Winter Park, Winter Garden, for instance. Winter Haven is where I'm from, Michael. You might want to write that one down because there are 3 winter something or other, so she'll help you with it. But we won't go into the strict argumentation. You can study that from a logic book. But it is the case, brethren. This is why we don't have anything to be ashamed of at all. It is the case that the new covenant authorizes singing and worship to God. Now, if you're looking at the book, follow me. I'm going to go fast here because I got to try to get some other material and things I didn't put in the material there. But here's your verses. The new covenant authorizes singing, not playing, not humming, not whistling, and it's specific even about the singing. Some brethren don't understand that. And they'll say, now you brethren, you sisters hum this thing, and then the rest of you say, no, it says speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. I'm not going to be totally radical. You can hold a note for a long time, I believe. Don't misunderstand here, but the fact is, telling people to hum is out of line. It's wrong. You should not do it. And you should preach on this and let brethren know what the situation is. The other thing is it a sin only for the denominationalist or is it only a sin for us? Some brethren look at it, well, when they're with the brethren, they sing a cappella. But when they go over and happen to visit, and I have tent meetings and all kinds of things, or some debates and whatever with people, and they, I do not sing with them, brethren. I told Vicki years ago when I attended a Methodist meeting, a youth meeting once with her, but I told her ahead of time. And why? That I did not believe I could do that, to sing, and with them doing their piano and organ. But I know some of you brethren, listening to me out here on the internet, you may go to the denominational building, a church building, and they hand you a songbook. You hadn't even thought about it, and you'll go ahead and sing when somebody's up here and they're a denominationalist playing that piano or organ. It's not the location, folks. It's what you're doing. It's the setting. And you're aiming this, psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, to God. And you should be singing, but if they're playing, they have put a coordinate in there that is unscriptural. You might as well say, like I've used for years, let's add to the Lord's table. Let's add to it, we'll keep the unleavened bread and the fruit of the vine, right? But let's add the heart of a dove. That's my favorite, by the way, for it's a peace symbol. Isn't it? Isn't it, Brother Brantley? Dove is a symbol of peace, and a lot of pictures and all kinds of things we're in the world today. So let's add the heart of a dove. And I've even got verses about it, about Jesus being the Prince of Peace, right? I could give that verse, and we'll just add that heart of a dove right over here. And we're still doing the unleavened bread, and we're still doing the fruit of the vine, but we're adding the heart of that dove over here to help us think about Christ as being the Prince of Peace. And that'll help me. Gene, that'll help you worship if you'll just follow my lead with that heart of a... And Gene's going to go, wait a minute. Is it authorized? Is it okay? The problem with Gene is he doesn't do this with his wife, Jerry. He doesn't ask permission like that like he should. And he gets in trouble on that one, just like he knows he will with God. So, Gene, the principle is the same. Jerry's not God. Jerry, are you listening? I'm not. But anyway, you get the idea here. But I just added the heart of a dove. And that subjectively, Daniel, that made me feel great. It made me think of Jesus. It would. I think of the Prince of Peace, don't you? There's the verses, Isaiah and other places here. So, but see, it won't work because it's unauthorized. Let's give the rest of the verses very quickly here, just in listing them. I wanted to get them at least on the tape here. When they had sung a hymn, they went out unto the Mount of Olives, Mark 14, Matthew 26:30. That's under Judaism even, but it's still just sing. Can you squeeze playing out of that word sung? Well, if you do, you're wrong. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns unto God, and the prisoners were listening to them. I won't even bother to list the verses. You have it here, Acts 16:25. But therefore will I give praise unto thee among the Gentiles, and play unto thy name. No, it says sing. And I will sing with the Spirit. I will sing with the understanding also. So twice in 1 Corinthians 14 it's sing. Speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing and making melody. Watch it there. It didn't say whistling. It didn't say humming. It didn't say playing. It says singing, and then it specifies where the melody comes from or is. And making melody with your heart to the Lord. That's Ephesians 5:19. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, admonishing or teaching and admonishing one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing, there it is again, with grace in your hearts unto God. I will declare thy name to my brethren in the midst of the congregation. I will sing thy praise. Hebrews 2:12. Through him, then let us offer up a sacrifice of praise to God continually. That is the fruit of lips which make confession to his name. Now, there'd be other ways you could do that, but I believe we ought to include that verse as a possibility, at least in telling us about the music God wants. Is any among you suffering? Let him pray. Book of James 5, verse 13. Is any cheerful? Let him hum praise. Is that the way your Bible reads? Let him hum praise? Mine doesn't. And really, brethren, this comes down to being pretty simple. Some of you know that if I have said this in the past, and I'll state it now. If we were authorized to have instrumental music and worship to God, I would be for it. So mark me as a heretic if you want, but I would be for it. But it doesn't matter what I'm for. It doesn't matter what you're for. It's only what does this book authorize Terry Hightower and every one of you in my audience here to do before God. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Colossians 3:17, think of all the verses. 1 Corinthians 4:6, that you might learn in us to not go beyond the things which are what? Even Johnny Oxendine knows that one. To not go beyond the things, Johnny, what? That are written. And there's all kinds, as you know, verses there. And if you haven't found those verses yet, let some of us help you find them. It's all about authority. So in those verses that I've just given, I've given really more than 9, but I listed them as 9. Is this authorizing vocal, or singing music, or mechanical instrumental music? Which one? And you're making a choice here, and Peggy that plays the organ at the Presbyterian Church better start thinking about it and going to the Scripture and seeing whether what she's doing in worship to God's right or not. That's what she better be thinking about in her own soul. You see, we don't sometimes approach it this way. I prefer, as you can tell, most of the time, I take a little hand, the gloves taken off, and let's have at it here in a Christian demeanor, certainly, and being tactful. But you've got to somehow usually jar these people, especially if they're preachers or they're higher ups in their religious group and trying to defend it. I remember, and I was going to mention a little later, but I'll just say it now because it seems to fit. A member of the Church of God. And there he is binding about women having to wear their hair a certain way and this and that and the other, but then he uses mechanical instruments of music. And so we started talking and discussing that, and he was saying, you're the group that won't, do such and such about mechanical instruments of music. He didn't put it that way because he hadn't studied it long enough to figure that the real difference out there about mechanical instrumental music. We have an instrument, and it's here. But with a human heart. But the fact is, he got on me, and he said, why, it's right there, the usual stuff. It's in the Old Testament, Terry. They use such and such, in Jewish worship, which I, of course, agreed with. But I just only asked him the one question. I said, are you willing to accept in Christian or New Testament worship to God through Christ today anything I can find that the Jews or anybody else did in the Old Testament? And here was his answer. There's that Campbellite hermeneutical system. And I said, well, at least I've got one, and yours is messed up, and you can't stay with it. And I just proved it by that one pointed question. Hey, that's following Jesus, if really, not to brag on me so much, but that's what Jesus did. You read it. Look at those things. And what I love is reading after Jesus gets through with some of those Sadducees and Pharisees that don't want the truth. Let me add that in, because I would hope he would convert them, But I love those verses that will say something like one of them, and they durst ask him, Jesus, no more questions. There's a reason for that. The reason is because he's consistent and they are not, and he's staying with the Word of God. And that's what we're all about. That's what we're all about. Share that with people. Point that out. I've baptized a number of people. If you, I'll say bait them, but you put the truth out here, and Jesus said you shall know the truth shall make you free. And if they have an interest in truth, we'll bring them on in. Well, back to the Church of God guy, talking with him, he went to the Old Testament, and he said, there's that Campbellite hermeneutical system. And then he went to harps in heaven, the usual deal. And I won't be able to get to all of these. I didn't even put them in the manuscript. I know you have these available to you in other materials. But anyway, he said harps in heaven. And of course, you can show like the prayers. The incense is, of course, the prayer equal. It's a figurative thing for the prayers of the saints, and things like that. But I didn't get into all that. I just asked him the one question again. And I said, are you saying that anything I can find or how things are run in heaven and how things operate in the afterlife are things that I can bring into Christian New Testament worship now? And he blew up again, and he said, Jerry, he said it again. There's that Campbellite hermeneutical system again. Now keep in mind, he's got it where he can bind buns on ladies' heads from certain verses. But here he is worshiping Almighty, the infinite God of the universe, who has given us these instructions, and they're right there in those verses that we just went over, and he doesn't get it. He doesn't follow what's in the Scripture, and then he actually does some stuff that's not taught and authorized in Scripture. That is not right. Brethren, the main difference between us and other people, whether they're faithful, unfaithful brethren even, the difference is in logic. It's in rationality with this book. That's the difference. Not any particular issue. Even mechanical instruments of music or baptism for remission of sins All of that flows and goes back to the undergirding situation, and that is you can reason correctly with the evidence. That's what it's all about right there, and that's what you got to get people to see. That's the difference between us and liberal brethren. That's actually the difference between us and anti-brethren. At least you kind of got a starting place, with some of them where they're binding where God didn't bind. They still misinterpret it, and they're still actually binding stuff for God. Look at Jesus in Matthew 7, Mark 7 and Matthew 15, 1 through 9. And some of his most scathing rebukes, brethren, were for antiism, binding where God didn't bind. You can still use the principle, like we do, to show liberalism being wrong of loosing where God hasn't loosed. But anyway, again, back to this, all those New Testament passages that we've used there that mention music in reference to worshiping deity, and in every one, even the first two, like I said, in which the disciples were still under Judaism, as it was done away, nailed to the cross, Colossians 2:14, you know that. The specified music is singing. Is there any question as to what the word sing authorizes in these pertinent verses that we went over? No. Does the word sing or the phrase fruit of the lips even imply or include playing music? No. Why? But it's by the law of identity. The law of identity, logically. Singing is singing. Singing is not playing. Playing is playing. Singing is singing. And never, in a sense, shall the twain meet, you see. Well, here is where I put in the second thing. Again, it is the case that there is no New Covenant passage authorizing any biblical, any verses authorizing coordinates to singing. Coordinates are like equal, in a sense, as far as coordinates to singing. And now here's where our opponents must produce their biblical evidence for mechanical instruments of music. And note, all it would take, brethren, and believe me, I've looked for it because I told you I'd be happy to have it subjectively, that kind of, I'm not into this thing like some of you. Some of you make the mistake of getting off and arguing with people, and I've had to go after a preacher or two on it because they start arguing, but I just like a cappella. It's just so beautiful. Yeah, it is. But that's not how you're going to show it's the only thing authorized. It's this that shows that, not subjective aesthetics. That's like arguing about a painting over here. Harold Davidson believes he's good looking and handsome, and he'd put a picture right up there. But all the rest of us in this room, I won't ask her, but we subjectively, Harold, we may think you is as ugly as a mud fence here, I don't care if you got a yellow tie on, Harold, you're still just, those facelifts just haven't quite cut it, you know what I mean? But that's not how to argue it. Do you understand? You argue it from here. What does Scripture say? What does it actually teach? What does it authorize? And it doesn't authorize hum, whistle, and any coordinate, doesn't matter what it is, or play. It says sing in all those verses. And we know, of course, historically the New Testament church did exactly that. That's just a corroboration. That's still not Scripture, is it? No, it's not on the par with this. This is the difference in what it says and what it teaches. Well, anyway, I say, where is the New Testament passage or its equivalent, which says like this? Here's one, and I've looked for this one. This is not really a full scripture from here. I hope you understand that now. But here's what you got to find. But about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing and playing hymns unto God, and the prisoners were listening to them. You see, Paul had a harp over here, Harold, and he was plucking that puppy, and he was just putting it right along and and he and his fellow prisoner were singing, and they were playing with it. I've got it now. If I had that verse, I don't care what any of the rest of you say and how long. It's not tradition either, brethren, that locks this thing in, is it? That's what some brethren argue from. They're just arguing from the tradition of the churches of Christ, and they're into the restoration movement and all that stuff. That's not what it's about. It's about this. It's about truth. It's about authority. And that's what we need to teach people and go back and deal with some fundamentals. The claim has often been made that sing or its derivative found in these verses listed that we went over somehow prohibits, or here's the word, excludes play or its derivatives. Technically, this is not true, as I've demonstrated with that fabricated verse there where I added in and play. It doesn't. This verse here on Ephesians 5:19 or Colossians 3:16 and any of the rest of them, Hebrews 2:12, whatever, they do not exclude a verse over here that we might find that has the word playing in it. Do you understand that? So here's the difference. And I've said this for years, put it in some of my books and stuff. We should follow the law not of exclusion, brethren. Tear that little outline up or at least adapt it and change it. It's the law of inclusion. It's the law of inclusion, and it is included that I can teach and show from Scripture I am authorized to sing. Sing, 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 singing, and so forth. Fruit of the lips in that one verse. But it is not anywhere to be found in Scripture that it would be authorized from, particularly the New Testament, that you can play, hum, whistle, and so forth, any kind of thing, or play, especially that. But it does not exclude. A singing verse does not exclude, we're saying, a verse if they could find it. And look at how many years they've looked for it. And you're ashamed of our position? I'm not. I know historically that it's true, but I know biblically, and that's the one real thing, that it's true. We're authorized to sing. Don't be ashamed. Don't duck your head. I've seen brethren hem haul around, mealy mouth around with people. Go ahead and speak up and say, yeah. And they'll ask you sometimes, how come the churches of Christ disallow? In the first place, we don't disallow it. This does. But it doesn't authorize what they're doing. That'd be a better way to do it. But I'll say, why don't you use mechanical instruments of music? And I say, why do you use it? Why do you use it? And where are your verses here that would authorize it? And they cannot for the life of them. They can't, even in debates with the Christian church, independent Christian churches and so forth, they can't find it. Michael, I think you had a debate, didn't you, with one of them? And Michael showed it. See, it was false. The thing is, stick with the Bible. And the fact is here, if the proponents of mechanical instruments of music could find just even the one verse authorizing their position, it is not countermanded by verses that authorize singing. If they could find that one verse that I fabricated that would have play about Paul and Silas. Therefore, why not more accurately call for Bible interpreters to understand the law, as I said, of inclusion, not the law of exclusion, the law of inclusion instead. It's no different at all from our insistence concerning the precision about the word baptize. No real difference there. And we point out to dip, to plunge, or immerse, what did it mean in the New Testament times? As you know, it can mean anything in Webster's dictionary now. But we want to know what it meant when the apostles said it, or taught it, and so forth, see, or wrote it. So again, the wrong question has been asked by denominationalists over the years, and even by some baby food, Hebrews 5, 12, 13, and 14 Christians, members of the church, about why do you disallow mechanical instruments of music in worship. And again, ask them, exactly how does the New Testament authorize do we have to have any authority for what we do in religion at all in Christianity? And here, then, that's when they must produce either a direct statement or a positive, I call it, example. There's positive and there's negative examples. And there's also implication being the third one. And they cannot justify anyone making that melody on a mechanical instrument. Now, before I quit here and run out of time, Michael calls me. I asked permission, by the way, about this. And we even had Jerry Brewer, for some reason, he was wanting one of these. I don't know why. You can ask him later about that, but here it is. And people will ask you stupid questions also. I just plainly say it's a stupid question. But especially the Christian church I've found over the years, if you ever had any dealings with some of them learned better and came out of all that. Like Ken Chumley, Think of some others. They studied their way, and they reasoned correctly with the Bible, and they left it, and they saw it was what was wrong. But they'll ask you questions like, well, when does Mr. Hightower, Terry, when does the devil crawl into this piano or this organ? When does the devil crawl in there? I'll tell you, he crawls in there in the same way he crawled into the golden calf back in the Old Testament. Isn't that right? I mean, I can give a bunch of examples there. But the devil crawls into anything, even something that seems innocuous like this does to them, when in fact it's like King Saul. I put this in the material. I'm going to run out of time, I know. But in 1 Samuel 13 and also in 1 Samuel 15, go back and read that. And look that Saul didn't end up saying, well, you know, I haven't done the Lord's will. These people won't say that either. If they may not know it, it may be an ignorant sin, but it's still a sin. But some of them can't, that you can know it. Saul could know that he disobeyed God's instruction back there, but he never quit saying that, well, I admit it, I haven't done the Lord's will. No, he said just the opposite of that. He said, I have done the Lord's will. And when he said that, there's contradictory stuff. Like in 1 Samuel 15, and the prophet said, what? And, you know, we always do this as preachers, don't we, guys? He said, what meaneth this bleeding of the, you know? And he's being called a liar by some animals out here. And yet he's saying, I have done God's will. He has not done it. He's in rebellion to God, and that's what you can be even when you subjectively feel and think and emotionally, like old Peggy that plays the organ at the Presbyterian Church. She thinks she's doing okay, doesn't she? Yeah. And so I'm not going after her motive strictly, but what I'm going after is the Bible says, study to show thyself approved unto God. And they get themselves into all kinds of trouble, like that Church of God preacher that I mentioned a while ago. And he has to then go after the so-called Campbellite. And I said, number one, I'm not a Campbellite. I'm a New Testament Christian. And so on. But that's what they have to do. They have to resort to ad hominem and bad ad hominem type argumentation. One of our answer to all this involves consistency. You remember Jesus said unto them, and Jesus answered and said unto them, I will ask you one question, which if ye tell me, I likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things. And that's when he asked, Matthew 21, verse 24, and, you know, he did that over and over. So the baptism of John, whence was it, from heaven or from men? And what he's calling for there, folks, it doesn't say it right there, but he's calling for consistency. And we are the ones who defend to the death Psalm 119, verse 160. What does it say? Psalm 119, verse 160, especially the American Standard Version. The sum of thy word is truth. The what of thy word? Part of thy word? No, consistency. It'll all go together like my two hands here and fit just like gears and go together like that. But it will not do it when you're wrong. Like Catholics, for instance. They will think a baby, an infant, is totally depraved. That's false. The Bible doesn't teach that. It teaches that babies are innocent. But they go over here and then they find a truth verse which teaches that baptism is for the remission of sins. So then you've already said the baby's in sin, so what do we do with the baby now, folks? How do we get the false doctrine of infant baptism? That's exactly how you get it. And it's logic, though, and putting the verses together properly. They're wrong on total depravity, but they could uphold, at least many of them still do, baptism is for the remission of sins. And they think a baby's got sin, so they do. Then, of course, they change the baptizo to dip, plunge, or immerse. They change it into sprinkling, and so on. Rather than, my dad told me one time, and he lost the clipping. He was going to save it for me, but he said that he read where some Catholics didn't even use water on a baby. They sprinkle rose petals on the little child. Well, I mean, you see how it all starts heading on out there once you move away from, biblical type authority. But the fact is, and I don't have to have verses that explicitly condemn mechanical instruments of music in worship to God either. Not any more than I have to have a verse that specifically condemns today incense in worship, praying to Mary, smoking dope, using holy water, and on we go. I don't have to have that verse. They don't have to have it for all that. And I'll promise you, if Jesus was here today, he'd go after that stuff and that inconsistency. And that's what he did to the people, that were around him. Well, again, there's not a mechanical instrumental music or advocate of mechanical instruments of music on God's green earth who doesn't violate the law of non-contradiction. They contradict themselves. It will not go together properly, but the fact is God is not the author of such confusion. You know that from such verses as 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 33 and many others. Well, again, this type of confusion, you could say, or contradiction is caused by human ignorance and sometimes willful positions of people, and how much humans are prone to self-deception, especially in their failure to give diligence to present thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, handling aright the word of truth. 2 Timothy 2, verse 15. And again, the American Standard footnote on this verse says, holding a straight course in the word of truth. Get it? Holding a straight course in the word of truth. That implies the central tenet of proper hermeneutic procedure, which is consistency. Consistency, non-contradiction. Consistency, wherein all the components fit together harmoniously. And again, when this total context approach is applied to Scripture, you will not worship God. You'll realize that you're actually defying, like Saul was, while you may claim you're worshiping him properly and think that you are subjectively and emotionally in whatever way, that you are not worshiping God according to truth. In John 4:24, you know what it says. We must worship God how? In spirit and in truth. He's deity. It's like I said, he's already overridden old Terry on that. I like mechanical instruments of music if I could do it, if I could find authority. It doesn't matter about my think-sos. The fact is, humans, it's ever been man's, let me close with this, it's ever been man's tendency, hasn't it, to ascribe to himself the right to simply pay no attention to the details of God's word. You see it over and over again in Scripture. To give himself, man gives himself credit that so long as he's being, quote, religious, then that's really the only real crucial matter. But the fact is, the Scripture teaches, number one, when man rejects God's word, he has in fact rejected God, and God rejects him. Number two, when man acts without the authority of God's word, he rejects God thereby, and is thereby rejected by him, by deity. And thirdly, when man truly accepts God's word, then God accepts and blesses him. Isn't that a great thing? The fact is, excuse me, that you put these three truths together in sort of a synthesis here and a summary, which is what preaching is all about. Preaching is implication. Preaching is implication. Did I say it enough? Preaching is implication. And you draw, it's not just standing up quoting verses right and left. Although it's great to quote verses, you want to put it together harmoniously and show what it authorizes and teaches. Man's plans in religion always fail. That's this kind of stuff. You look at that again. As far as I'm concerned, in worship to God, that's a satanic device right there. That's what that is. Isn't it? Show it me from the Bible I'm wrong. Any of you, I don't care if you're in the internet, get my address and write me or call me. Mike will give you my phone number. Man's plans in religion always fail, while God's plans always succeed. The one brings what? Rejection, and the other always brings acceptation or acceptance with God. Thank you very much.
An excellent lesson. A couple of things. Normally, we do not allow an instrument in the building.
Jerry asked for it.
Where whether weddings, funerals, it doesn't matter. It's just simply not allowed. Do not want to be associated or allow our minds to be conditioned to such by its presence. We allowed it for Terry for illustration purposes only, to show that it's not, that is sinful. It's wrong. But we did want to make that clarification. We need to understand, and I think a lot of brethren fail to understand the difference between subordinates and coordinates. And I think a lot of members of the church, even if you say those words, they go, huh? What are you talking about? There's no concept. And another point that I think we need to understand is that singing is actually a subordinate to vocal music. A lot of times through the years we use vocal music as opposed to mechanical instruments music. God didn't authorize vocal music. Understand that. He authorized a specific subordinate of vocal music, which is singing. That's why humming that you mentioned, or beatboxing that we hear, or whatever their terminology is that will change in the next couple of days probably, why that's wrong. Because God didn't authorize that. That is a coordinate of singing that is a subordinate to vocal music. And they've got in their minds, as long as it's vocal, it's all right. No, it's not. And simply because someone might not bring it into the building. In fact, I had a discussion not long ago with someone on Facebook that argued beatboxing and everything, all of that was all right, as long as he would oppose it as far as worship, but get allowed the worship, and it was all right. He has this radio station in which he thinks he's the new, somehow, king of rap or whatever, in which he uses religious songs and they're beatboxing and everything. I asked, where the authority? And I got called all sorts of nice names. Now, those things are coordinates to what God has authorized, and they are sinful when using it in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And then the other aspect, and I think we possibly need to do some more teaching on this, the law of exclusion versus the law of inclusion. I had a preacher call me, older preacher call me just not too long ago, that he didn't understand. What do you mean that singing does not exclude the instrument? No, it doesn't. Singing has never excluded the instrument. I asked him a question. We are to believe in God. That's authorized, right? Hebrews 11 and verse 6. That is a specific command, right? That means that it excludes believing in Jesus. Now, if a specific command, believe in God, excludes everything else, then we do not have the right to, and it would be sinful to believe in Jesus. How foolish. Now, we can understand that in that case. Why can't we understand it everywhere else? The law of exclusion is very simply because God has not authorized it, and thus it is excluded. But the specific command of one thing does not exclude other things. That's the law of exclusion and the law of inclusion that we need to understand and probably do more preaching about. Well, I've talked long enough, and we'll have about 5-minute break at this time.